Midday check-in. You already know. Midday Java. Pour it up strong. Half the day gone, but we still on. Midday Java. Talk that truth. Fuel for the grown. Spark for the youth. Sun high, grind, live city on go. Deadlines, headlines, what you need to know. Health, wealth, culture, power. Real conversations every hour. Sip slow, but the message move fast. We building the future, not stuck in the past. Community rising, voices louder. Midday Java, energy power. Midday Java, pour it up strong. Pour it up strong.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Listen, we're going to jump right in because we have our Congresswoman with us, and I know that her time is valuable. Though I know she considers checking in here on a community platform valuable as well. As you all saw in the video, she let us know last week that this was definitely a priority for her. And so welcome to the Java Cafe. It's a Midday Java. Listen, do me a favor so you hear directly from our Congresswoman. So much that's going on. She recently reviewed the Epstein files. She has been an advocate around immigration for years. And also, we're going to chat with her a little bit and probably begin with this because I like to get the stuff out the way and then talk about the work. But there's been a lot of chatter online about this Black woman and her husband, our friend, a Java Cafe member, about her ability to gain wealth. And, you know, Black economic development is definitely something that we talk about here often. So without further ado, I'd like to bring in our Congresswoman this morning. Good morning. Good afternoon. I'm so used to saying good morning, but good afternoon to you, Congresswoman. As I always do, I have to ask, how are you doing? As you greet the audience, we have to ask, how are you doing respectfully as Ayanna?
Well, it's always good to be with you in virtual community with you. And I look forward to our being in beloved community in person together real soon. You know, I am feeling reflective. Reverend Jesse Jackson, as I've said many times before, Chicago's the city that raised me and Boston's the city that changed me. And so, you know, reading the Chicago Defender, being proximate to Rainbow Push Coalition meetings, being at many tables and breaking bread with Reverend Jackson, I'm feeling reflective about his contributions, his legacy, his leadership, the path he blazed. And I'm also, of course, centering his humanity and thinking about my colleague, Jonathan, his son, who serves with me in the Congressional Black Caucus, and the entire Jackson family. So I'm feeling reflective. And I'm also feeling grateful to be home and to be in community. My work does require me to commute to Washington and to be away from all of you and away from my family Monday through Friday. Under a Republican majority, I only have one full week a month that I am home. And so I'm feeling reflective and also grateful.
I'm glad for that. And Congresswoman, thank you for reminding us. I saw that today. And just, you know, it's very interesting of where we are in a generational shift of, you know, Black leadership and those that we saw in a very interesting time. Congresswoman, in that time, you know, we see that when Black and brown people, women, often achieve a right to gain wealth, that those that don't agree with that, that believe in systemic constraints, often fight that. And currently, I know you stay away from the fray and, focus on the work, but there's this chatter, on media around you and our brother Conan and ability to gain wealth. And I just wanted to ask you, your thoughts there, and also speak to that right that as a Black woman. Yes, I'll shut up. Yes.
Oh no, I want you to ask your question.
My question is, like,
Yeah.
why do you think well, can you talk to the energy and what it is on which we need to stay focused and not give into distractions, but also raise that you got every right as a Black woman to gain wealth?
Yeah. So, I gather you said chatter. So I gather this question is informed by, in particular, right-wing chatter, what I would characterize as clickbait, and a very consistent play um, by right-wing media, and certainly a fascist government who has weaponized the Department of Justice disproportionately against um, Black leadership in Congress. So I'm not surprised by any of this. If you have the time to watch me every day, caping for Black America and holding accountable everyone from the Secretary of Housing to Commerce, to my work in survivors justice for the Epstein files, my work on reparations. I'm an unapologetic, truth-telling Black woman, honoring the tradition of Black women before me. And I feel a great responsibility to do that work and to do it in that way. And that comes with it comes with these sorts of attacks. Now, let me just say this. My proudest title is to be wife. I am proud of what my husband and I have accomplished individually, what we have accomplished collectively. I, grew up in a household where I, you know, we struggled, a single parent household. We never owned anything. Our cars were regularly repossessed. We regularly faced the threat of eviction. There have been periods in my life, in my 20s, where I was unhoused and couch surfing. I did not even finish paying off my student loan debt until I was in Congress. So I'm proud of what we've accomplished individually and collectively. And my husband in particular, having been a sanitation worker, having been a youth worker in nonprofit, having worked for a foundation, having worked in a cabinet post for a mayor, and running very successfully a White House initiative, the first of its kind at that time, with my brother's keeper. And since then, my husband has gone on to become an entrepreneur, to start a successful small business, working on projects in housing and reentry and youth development. And I think his story is an inspiring one. And I'm proud to be his wife. And again, these attacks are exactly that. They are attacks. Now, I want to speak to some of the particulars. As a member of Congress, we file financial disclosures. I believe in transparency. We follow the rule of the law. So we file a financial disclosure report. And this is where the misinformation comes into play on the reporting. So let's say you have a retirement fund, and in that, you're provided with a range of assets. or evaluation of that retirement account. Okay, it could be valued, let's say, from $10,000 to $1 million. So what people in bad faith will do is they will round up to the highest part of that evaluation and then count that towards your wealth. And again, it's just meant for clickbait. And the tactic there is to just do a generous roundup to the highest end estimate of the range. So I hope
If
that
I could, it does. And if I could chime in, because you did level set. You're right, and thank you for some explanation. You know, one of the goals here is to get accuracy out there, but I don't want to feed into what is, as you said, a distraction. But I wanted to also, I'm a little bit defensive of both of you, and so I could not have you here and not allow you to just.
No, James. I'm so glad you asked the question. I'm sorry for the
Yes, ma'am.
glare of my glasses. I'm trying to adjust that a little bit. But let me just say this. It's important to know because there are many people, everyone watching this has worked hard for whatever they earn. And we live, some of us are the first in our family to be able to rub two nickels together. And so we are not dissimilar from many families living in, a city and a time that is expensive. Like I said, I just finished paying off my student loan debt once in Congress. How many people do you know, James, that on paper are making a decent living, but they are still struggling to pay for their children's college, to pay for childcare, to pay for elder care, to pay for medical debt, to pay for student loan debt. And then there are hidden costs that are never reported. That cousin that's calling you that's in a bind, that niece that needs help with their tuition. So I know that we are not unique in that regard. I don't want to pretend that there has not been progress, hard-earned progress in our life, but the reporting is inaccurate. And it is meant to distract. It is clickbait. They make money, off of promoting this misinformation. And so I hope that clears it up.
It definitely does, and thank you for that. One of the other things, and I'm going to move us into the work, and thank you for just level setting for those that do care about you and Conan, and just make sure that we know, but to make sure that's there. One of the other distractions, Congresswoman Pressley, is this back and forth with the Epstein files. And we're going to talk a little bit about this, and then ask you to give us an update around your work with immigration as well. You had every intent to be in district on Friday, and shout out to Toy Burton of Dee Dee's Cry. Two, in a time, Congresswoman, where being Black and our mental health is very different these times. But you did let us know that you were scheduled and had the, I don't want to say, you were scheduled to review the Epstein files. What is it, Congresswoman Pressley, that in your review, what was the outcome? What did you, what did you discover, and how are you working, as we know, to protect the victims? And I said this morning, you've been public about being a survivor of sexual assault and abuse. And so I know that this is something that is very personal and dear to you. And I will just say, folks, as we're talking about this, if this topic is something that is triggering for you, please tune off and come back at a later time. But we want to allow our Congresswoman to talk about one of the things for which she's advocating is those victims of sexual assault, particularly in this Epstein files thing. Congresswoman.
Okay, so as a survivor of a decade of childhood sexual abuse and also campus sexual assault, and as someone who has long done the work of survivors justice, I do want to name an incredible local organization on the issue of human trafficking that taught me how to ensure that the work that I do on behalf of survivors is survivor-centered and survivor-led. I want to shout out My Life, My Choice. And I think it is important that people recognize, as vile as the things are that it went on for decades, and the institutional betrayal that the survivors of this pedophile Ponzi scheme by Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell and all of their evil co-conspirators in the trafficking of children, that this may be the largest human trafficking, ring, for lack of a better word, in the history of our country. But I want people to also recognize that human trafficking exists in this city and in your communities. And so I am fighting hard for the survivors because they are a proxy for all survivors. In the same way that there were systemic abuses in the Catholic Church, in the same way that there were systemic abuses in the Boy Scouts, and those that are implicated in this trafficking of children, the grooming, the preying upon, the exploitation, the raping, the selling of children, they need to be named and shamed and held accountable. There can never be justice because, as a survivor myself, I can attest to the fact that you are changed permanently for the rest of your life on a cellular level. I know survivors of Epstein's trafficking and abuses who did not have children because they feared they would not be able to keep those children safe. And if they have had children, they are homeschooled and they don't allow them to leave their site. They struggle with suicide ideation. Some of the survivors have taken their lives. They suffer with depression and mental health. When something like this happens to you as a child, it changes you forever because that is your foundation. Those are your formative years. And so I'm fighting for accountability. Again, there can never be justice, but I'm fighting for accountability. I'm fighting for their healing. And I'm doing that in my role on the Committee on Government Oversight and Reform. I have not reviewed all the Epstein files. There are millions, and much of the documents are redacted. And so we're daily in a fight for documents to be unredacted so that everyone can be exposed. You know who these survivors are. You need to know who their perpetrators are. And as one of the survivors, Virginia Giuffre, who took her life, said, we need to know who all the monsters are because they could still be out here doing the harm. And when you learn how many people participated in ostensibly a cover-up at every level of government and law enforcement because of overwhelmingly the behaviors of white, wealthy, well-connected men. So that's why I've taken on that fight. But again, I just want folks to recognize the good work of organizations like My Life, My Choice. And I thank them for teaching me that this work needs to be survivor-centered and led. And so that is why I work so closely with the Epstein survivors. They directly shape and inform my strategic approach and response in the work of their healing and in the pursuit of accountability.
Definitely, Congresswoman. Through our partnership with ABCD Health Services, last month we had a show about human trafficking, and it is something that in this case is international and then local as well. So thank you for being a champion of that. That, Congresswoman, is a distraction, by my impression, to what's going on with ICE and immigration. And it is, you know, it peaked from wrongful getting to the worst of lethal killing people to just this what seemingly looks like a legal process that could lead to more things when it comes to, you know, foundational Black Americans. And that's been a topic here. But Congresswoman Pressley, what's going on with immigration? I had Jeff Thielman on today from the International Institute of New England, and talking about their work in immigration. And so what is it that you are continuing to do? And then in there, Congresswoman, if you will, as we get ready to wrap up.
Oh, I'm not ready to wrap up. We will run over.
Well, I'm with you. Let's go.
Cover. So my people will take their cues from me.
Yes.
I know I have probably a hard stop, no later than 12:45. Okay.
Yes.
But I want to be respectful of your time. So let me just try to move through a couple of things here. So
Absolutely.
I want to say this on the issue. I have long done the work of, I lead on pardons, commutations, clemency, any legislation in that space, any people whose sentences were commuted, people who came home, people who were moved off of death row. That is work that I've led on in Congress. I have plenty of receipts to support that. Google me, because I can't enumerate them all here. But I have long done the work of calling out the abuses and the legislated humanitarian crisis and anti-Blackness that is mass incarceration. If you care about what has happened to poor folks, Black and brown folks, in a system that is incentivized by corporations and for profit, you cannot not also care about, in my opinion, mass deportations, which are ostensibly mass kidnappings, and the unlawful detaining and deporting of our immigrant neighbors into detention facilities, ICE detention facilities, which are incentivized by the same for-profit system. Moreover, the rogue, racist, racial profiling, violent, murderous actions of these masked militia that your taxpayer dollars are paying for, right? This administration cut healthcare to plus up the budget for ICE. It's important to keep in mind that ICE, which has only been in existence since 2003, and in my opinion, we do not need it. We should defund it and abolish it. We should not be doing immigration enforcement under the Department of Homeland Security anyway. And I'm not new to this issue. I ran on it in 2018 because I didn't need one more person's human rights to be violated, constitutional rights denied, or a person to be harmed, maimed, or killed to know that it needs to be abolished. And so at that time in 2018, as is so often the case for pace-setting, truth-telling Black women, I was called radical and accused of being hyperbolic and hysterical. And sadly, and this does not give me any satisfaction, every harm and abuse that I predicted and others with me that took that position has come to pass. Finally, what I would say is that I have legislation that we have pushed to be considered as a part of the Senate negotiations, the Qualified Immunity Abolition Act, which would apply specifically to federal law enforcement. It's legislation I've introduced with Senator Markey because qualified immunity is an unjust legal doctrine that allows federal law enforcement, well, all law enforcement, but speaking right now, federal law enforcement, to operate with callous disregard for human life with impunity. If a doctor harms you, you have malpractice. If a lawyer doesn't do their job, you have negligence. There's no recourse for federal law enforcement and the chaos and the terror that they are sowing. This has nothing to do with public safety. It is making everyone less safe, whether you're Black, brown, indigenous, AAPI, LGBTQ, a baby, a child, a grown person, white, wealthy, poor, because anything that's saying they're doing something in the name of law and order that denies you your constitutional rights of due process has nothing to do with law and order. And it sure as hell ain't got nothing to do with public safety. And in the same way that I do not believe that the KKK can be reformed, those were also masked white militia. ICE cannot be reformed. And so I'm pushing for my Qualified Immunity Abolition Act so that we can ensure families are recourse to sue federal law enforcement for the terror they've left in the wake and the harm that they've caused.
Congresswoman, thank you. And I thank you for leaning into, that inroad. A few of us that have observed for months, Malia Lazu and others have, I think you did say the word inroad into, when you said we need to care about systemic constraints and also illegal authority that asserts to hurt people by how they appear. And in this case, you have any level of melanin, it's interesting for you. But then also we're seeing now, as you said, white men, white women, it's now gotten the attention, and there's a whole,
But I'm
conversation.
just saying that it's all connected.
Yes.
I can't do the work of mass incarceration and not also do the work of addressing mass deportation or mass kidnappings, because that's what they are. And I also wanted to make this clear, because you saw it in Chicago. Any place that there is an increased surveillance or law enforcement presence, Black folks certainly stand to be harmed. So this is not a harm that is contained. This is not just about Latinos. This is not just about, immigrants from Central America. Black folks stand to be harmed anytime that there is an increased surveillance and law enforcement presence, a surge like what we've seen in Minnesota and what we've seen in Illinois. And in fact, you saw Black people being pulled out of apartment buildings, young people being profiled walking down the street. So I know that in a scarcity mindset, it is very easy to other. And every time you see something to say, why them and what of my fight? Why them and what of my injustice? And I'm saying that these are two sides of the same evil, white supremacist, rogue, racist, for-profit incentivized coin.
Congresswoman, that is the level set that I wanted to do for us, that some months ago we realized this was an inroad, and now we're seeing the inroad having more infiltration. And at worst, it seems that this is the path to getting back to things like stop and frisk, for which you fought against, some years ago. The other thing I wanted to ask you to highlight, you often talk about our Black joy. And I think you understand the statement. You're there, you're fighting at a federal level. You see some things going on locally in the district. Congresswoman, you look fine. Don't worry about no glare or nothing.
Glare is bothering me. Go ahead. I'm like, how come Jimmy don't have a glare?
I'm just saying, because it took 6 years to kind of almost
How
get
come
this
Jimmy don't have a glare? Okay. So what's the other question you want to talk to me about? Because I want people to know about my daily fight on behalf of Black people, and to understand that is what gets me in the crosshairs of these attacks. I'm not, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't shrink in my Blackness. And Jesse Jackson, Mel King, these are people that modeled for us that you can be unapologetically Black and still do the work on behalf of a multiracial democracy and class solidarity. So I don't like rainbow push, rainbow, when Mel King spoke to that, when Jesse Jackson spoke to that, that was the acknowledgement that our freedoms and our destinies are inextricably tied. And because they were committed to class solidarity, because they cared about a multiracial democracy, because Jesse Jackson also talked about Palestine, does not mean that he cared any less about Detroit or Chicago.
Because it's humanity. A Congresswoman, Ania Grace brought this up at GBH last week about the fact that to assert the right to dwell and live peaceably and gain wealth and whatnot as a Black or brown person in this country, to have to assert that removes the sense of the white supremacists don't have any concern for our humanity. So AP, please talk about the daily that you do. And we, a lot of us know this, and we're aware that it's, distraction, but I want to ensure that we close out with, talking about Black joy, because you talk about that being a form of resistance. It's a form of strength. And AP, in this Black History Month, with everything that's going on nationally, and there is a sentiment within one of your cities within the district, Black Boston, that it's feeling interesting, these days. Your thoughts on how important, it's always important, but there's a different sense, I believe, Congresswoman, that we need to tap into as strength and resistance, and proactively for our mental health, our Black joy.
Okay, how do I want to get at this? Okay, first and foremost, as I've said many times before, I'm opposed to Black on Black crime in any way, shape, or form. And so I do think that Accountability is important. We should practice, if we really love each other, more call-ins than call-outs. And I wish that there were some conversations that we could have constructively as family and not give other people publicly the satisfaction. I also just want to say that I do not define Black leadership exclusively to people that have a comma and a title after their name, because history has shown me that, particularly in the face of fascism or a dictator or emboldened white supremacy, legislated and otherwise, appeasement doesn't work. Capitulating and shrinking doesn't work. My silence will not save me. It will not save any of us. But what does save us is community. What does save us is solidarity. What does save us is being organized. What does save us is every person doing their part and bringing their gift. I don't say that to abdicate my responsibility as a leader. I'm leveraging every tool available to me. The power of my pen as a lawmaker, the power of my letterhead, the power of my platform, the power of the movement, the power of convening, the power of my voice. And I will continue to be exhaustive in those efforts on behalf of Black people and all marginalized people, because I just want all of us to be free. But if movements are what has sustained us, what has transformed us, what has advanced progress, I just want to say that's what we need to get back to. It's, yes, hold your elected officials accountable. Demand more of us. Affirm us when we do something that you approve. And when there's something that we have done you disagree with, or maybe you don't fully understand, call the question. But I also need folks to understand this moment, when they're in this Black History Month, the 100th anniversary of Negro History Week, when we are experiencing attacks on Black bodies, on Black people, on Black votes, on Black leaders, on Black power, on Black progress, we're awaiting a decision from the Supreme Court right now that could further obliterate voting rights. And we're awaiting movements from other state houses that could result in 30 congressional Black caucus seats being undone.
And the SAVE Act as well, if you want to, touch on that.
I can speak to that. It's another example of voter suppression. But my point is, as the brother Charles Dutton said in Menace to Society, the hunt is on and you are the prey. Black power, progress, votes are being attacked in every single way. We need to be focused on organizing. Yes, truth-telling, accountability, and organizing. The SAVE Act is Jim Crow, plain and simple. I'll give you a quick example. What this aims to do is like a poll tax from back in the day. If you do your due diligence, Jimmy, and you register to vote, or James, and then you go and present your driver's license or a real ID or a state ID, they could say that's not sufficient proof of citizenship. The SAVE Act stands for Saving America. The Save America Act stands for Safeguarding American Voters' Eligibility. It is a solution in search of a problem. They believe that non-citizens are voting in droves, and so they want every voter to prove that they are a citizen of this country. That is already against the law. And based on what we just talked about with ICE, I don't imagine there are droves of undocumented people, James, looking for the criminal penalty of incarceration or deportation for voting. Non-citizens already cannot vote in this country. So what they're saying now is you could need a passport. You could need a birth certificate, right? Now for 68 million women in this country, their birth certificate doesn't match their current name because they hyphenated their name or they changed it when they got married. What are they supposed to do? For people that don't have a passport, it's about 146 million people in this country don't have a passport. It would cost you $130 to purchase one. So this is a solution in search of a problem. Non-citizens already cannot vote. So who will be impacted by this are women, Black folks, military people, military voters, and rural voters. So
And
it's
elders.
a vote
And
and
elders.
elders. It's
Yep.
a voter suppression bill, because if you've changed your voter registration because you changed party status or because you moved, all of those things could result in a situation where you could be dropped from the rolls, purged from the rolls, or when you go to vote, that they could say this form of ID is not good enough and you need further proof of citizenship. And so that puts the burden on the voter. We need to be focused on how to make voting more convenient, more accessible, not creating more barriers. And that's exactly what this will do. So when I say the hunt is on, the pursuit is on, they hate us because they hate us. They do all this because they know our power, and they're looking to suppress it in every single way. Now, I got to talk about some legislative work very quickly, because I serve on the Financial Services Committee, and you all know I'm governing in a climate that is hostile and dysfunctional. So I need to let you know I'm still moving legislation. And I'm going to follow my notes so you know exactly what I've done. So last week, the House passed the Housing for the 21st Century legislative package that has some Democrat and Republican bills. And 2 of my bills were included in that. I said I'm using my power of the pen as a lawmaker, even in this climate. So I passed the Helping More Families Save Act, which would scale up the family self-sufficiency program. This allows low-income families to achieve their financial goals of saving money. Because y'all know people aren't supposed to be spending more than 30% of their income on rent, and most are spending 80%. So this is a pilot program that will allow people to reach financial goals and to save. That's called the Helping More Families Save Act. It's a plus up for the Family Self-Sufficiency Program, which is a pilot. The other is the Eviction Helpline Act, which would require HUD to establish and promote a national hotline to provide eviction-related counsel. Because as we have found over and over again, when people are, threatened with eviction, they stand a higher probability of not being evicted with legal representation. So that's what my Eviction Helpline Act would address, because it would require HUD to establish a national hotline for eviction-related legal counsel. Then also my legislation, the Innovation Fund Act, it passed in the Senate. And what this would do, James, is give monies to incentivize and reward municipalities that are being innovative about increasing a housing supply, more mixed income housing, and also zoning reform. And so since we can't do zoning reform on the federal level, but we know we need that, this Innovation Fund Act will get money to states and incentivize municipalities and reward people that are prioritizing mixed income housing and zoning reform. And then finally, James, because I know you care about wealth building, I want to talk about my bill in partnership with Senator Raphael Warnock that just passed the House, and that is the Housing Appraisal Modernization Act. There is incredible racial bias when it comes to appraisals. So you could have a home that is literally owned by a Black family, owned by a white family, next door to each other, same neighborhood, same block. And they will be appraised at different values. And that means Black people are missing out on millions, collectively billions of dollars. If you want to take equity out of your home to pay for elder care or your child's college tuition or whatever you might need that for, you are at a disadvantage of doing that because of appraiser bias. And so what my Housing Appraisal Modernization Act, which passed the House, and again, this is in partnership with Senator Raphael Warnock of Georgia, what this would do is it would help families be able to challenge those bias valuations, and it would develop a public appraisal database so that you can see exactly what the person next door to you, if it's owned by a non-Black family, what their home was valued at. So again, I know legislation can make people's eyes glaze over, James, and policy feels super wonky. But, I know folks are, when you come on here, they want to know, okay, that's all fine and good, but what have you done for me lately? And Democrats don't have the majority, so you can't move any legislation. Why did you reintroduce reparations, Ayanna? All the things. But I'm focused on being two tracks. One, how do I mitigate harm? And the other is the North Star of how do I advance an affirmative vision. So that's why I can do things like reintroduce reparations, knowing it's not going to pass, but in a moment of anti-Blackness, be unapologetically pro-Black and say, we are deserving of that, while also working within the master's house with the master's tools to address these systemic injustices that Black folks experience disproportionately. So I'm sure you got people that could let you know their house was not appraised according to its value, and the ways in which that denied and deprived their family. And then finally, community project funding, earmarks, right? That is a process whereby community members, and James, I hope you have me come on or someone from my team to tell people how they can apply. But I've delivered millions of dollars to community projects based on people applying and then my fighting like hell. And ultimately, the appropriators, they decide who gets what, okay? But what I do is partner with people locally and say, hey, this application is open. If you fit this eligibility criteria, apply. And then I fight like hell for as many of my projects to get that money. Well, the Louis D. Brown is now getting $1 million in this most recent community project funding. Now, we asked for $5 million, but you got to understand the climate under which I'm operating. Yeah. But we are glad that will be a $1 million investment to go towards investing in the incredible programming and a new facility for the Louis D. Brown Peace Institute. So that's just one such example that I wanted to name.
Congresswoman Pressley, I wanted you to end, sort of with the importance of Black joy, but I just sat here and got joy from the fact that, one, I want to clarify one thing, and I know you'll be glad to hear this. Since some things happened locally, the civic engagement, the amount of comments, Brother Carlos Enriquez, others, former Counselor Anderson and others have come in here, and the people are paying attention. And we know all politics are local, but we've also been trying to explain what you're doing, what the state impact is, and then locally, our first sort of line of defense in a lot of this work. And so thank you for what you're doing at what I call the 50,000-foot view. And then the engagement.
I'm doing the macro. I'm doing the macro work. My job, and I'll educate the audience, I represent majority parts of Boston, majority parts of Cambridge, all of Somerville, Randolph, Everett, Chelsea, and Milton. Okay. My job is to advance federal legislation. Now, I do that with a parochial lens, focused on how to improve the outcomes in my district. I do not get to just write legislation for the Massachusetts 7th. I vote on federal bills. I write federal bills for the country. But what informs how I vote, what I co-sponsor, and the bills that I write, I do in partnership with you, like the People's Justice Guarantee, and so many other bills that I can offer as an example that you all have been my co-authors. My other job is to deliver federal resourcing. So that is about money. And I deliver that money to the state. I deliver that money to municipalities after advocating for those monies in a budgetary and an appropriations process. And then the last example I offered, community project funding, that is my favorite kind of work because that's not top down, that is community up. That is you all locally from BECMA, ACEDON, Amplify, Louis D. Brown Peace Institute, Roxbury Works, ROCA. I mean, I could name many, many, many organizations and efforts saying, hey, we're going to apply for this money. We believe we fit the criteria and the eligibility, and we can help you. We'll hold your hand and workshop with you how to apply, how to write your application in such a way that you really are eligible. And then fight like hell for you to get that money. But y'all, I'm not walking around with a purse. You know what I'm saying? And I just dip into my bag and say, and you get $1 million, and you get $1 million, and you get $1 million. I wish it were that simple, but you have to apply, and then you have to fit the criteria, and then I have to advocate. And that's what I do. But that is my job. And I also want to say, as someone who was an aide for 16 years,
Yep.
that I have a staff, depending on the day of, where our staffing levels are, 4 or 5 people to serve almost 700,000. We have a district office in Dorchester, and many of you reach out around help for everything from rental assistance to immigration, passports, Social Security, IRS. And my office did win the award out of everyone in Congress, Democrats and Republicans. We won the award for constituent accessibility and accountability. I take that very serious, because the job of a member of Congress is not just how we vote and what resources we deliver. It is also that bread and butter work of constituent services. And my team does a stellar job, and might I add, under a hostile administration where our funding is very unpredictable, and my staff has gone weeks at times without even getting paid, because they are committed. When we had those federal government shutdowns, and we are constantly being threatened by more shutdowns, and they are dedicated public servants. And so I did just want to shout out, my staff, and we'll come back as often as you'll have us. And if you ever want any of my team members to come on and explain how they can apply for community project funding, because those portals and that opportunity will be opening up soon. But thank you for doing the work of educating people, because this is really a fight for truth in this moment. The opposition has made fiction, starting where we began this conversation, you and I, fiction more compelling than fact. And in the overwhelm, people don't always want to take it on themselves to get to the bottom of what is real and what isn't, because everyone's just trying to survive, keep their sanity and keep their safety in this moment. And that's understandable. So it is always okay to call the question. But your voice and your role is so needed. And what I've been telling everyone, James, is just bring your gift. This is your gift and what you're bringing. But everyone has to bring your gift, because this isn't about surviving the next 3 years. We're determining the next 100. Somebody already wrote the blueprint for your survival. That's why you can be here doing what you're doing. We have to write the blueprint for someone else's survival. And that is not just the work of a legislature in a blue state. That is not just the work of 213 members of a Democratic caucus in Washington. That is the work of all of us. And so you need to bring your gift. So maybe I'm going to hold the sign that you made. Maybe I'm going to sing the song that you wrote. Maybe I'm going to speak on the microphone that you're making sure is working. Maybe I'm going to deliver a speech that you helped to edit. Or you told me you might want to think about this or consider that. We all have a role to play, but we have to play it. We have to play it and turn to one another. Choose community over chaos. James, let me ask you a question. Do you know your neighbors?
I just moved, and I have been very intentional about introducing myself, and this latest snowstorm induced some unintentional, in a good way.
And I'll just say, look, I don't know my neighbors, because in an urban landscape, people, and particularly post-COVID, people tend to just isolate.
Yes.
Especially if they've moved someplace they haven't lived their whole lives. But I'm going to tell you, get to know your neighbors, because you're going to need them. This is the mutual aid begins with your own block. That's what I saw in Minnesota. They were able to get Hungry Babies formula, to get people that were afraid to go to work for fear of being disappeared and detained. How you got to have these networks already, so it's block by block. It's neighborhood by neighborhood. So I'm going to keep you posted on that, because I'm going to model what I'm preaching, and I'm going to invite folks in, and they'll get to see my own process as I go door to door and get to know my neighbors and develop that network, because we don't know when we're going to need that mutual aid, that communal organizing to keep one another safe. And I would say, for my Black joy, is all about my Black diamond and our Black love. And it's all about our beautiful daughter who will be attending HBCU in the fall as a baby bison at Howard University, majoring in political science. So that is giving me, even though she done said her whole life she can't stand politics, not gonna do politics and all the things, but I guess she gets it honest, y'all, by osmosis. All those community meetings me and Kona been dragging her to, for her entire life. And so very proud of her and excited to be an HBCU mom.
Congresswoman, thank you, thank you, thank you. I am glad because I know we started out and you were reflective about Reverend Jackson, and then I've seen the transition back into that fire that is everything with Black woman magic, with human magic, with just skills and abilities and passion that are advocated for us at a federal level. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I can't let you go without imitating your Black diamond. I'm sure he said, babe, I love you. I love my brother.
That baritone is often imitated, never duplicated. I keep telling him we need to get him an agent and have him do some voiceovers. But
Congresswoman, I want to stay in good with your staff. One, I want to name Brother Eddie to attest to what you said about your staff. I reached out to him and he got, there's a young man with an immigration issue and Eddie was right on it. Seeing Sophia in community. Sarah, as you know, the vet, and others there. Avery.
Yeah.
Also, who else was I? Ricardo.
Yeah, Ricardo. Yeah. No, I have an incredible team in our district office, and we've done open houses in the past, but COVID had slowed some of that down. But we'll be doing another one, and folks can get to know. And if you ever want members of our team to come and do remote office hours at your business or any place, we can come and do that as well. But I know I've got to transition. I'm looking at the time, but
yes, because I don't want to get in trouble.
You're not gonna get in trouble. My name's on the door, so you're not gonna get in trouble. Okay.
Hi, Sarah and everybody. No, so I'm messing.
Yeah, you're not gonna get in trouble. But I do want to say again, brother, thank you for bringing your gift to the resistance, so that people can be fully informed. And I look forward to seeing you in community real soon.
Thank you. I love you, Congresswoman, AP, sister, advocate, impactful woman, Black woman. Thank you. And we'll talk with you soon. And I'll follow up with folks about bringing them in for the application process.
Okay, that's excellent. And I know Avery dropped a bunch of links on the bills.
Yes, we've been adding them. Yes.
And other relevant information. So in case you want to share that with your audience, okay?
Absolutely. Thank you, AP. I appreciate you. Listen, folks, I hope you were, first of all, informed. Secondly, inspired and encouraged, and just simply to hear that Cora is taking political science is interesting, and so that's just a testament to recognizing and stepping into your power. And there was so many nuggets that she dropped that can be applicable. We've been talking about local Black leadership and economic wealth and Black economic wealth specifically. Folks, I'm literally supposed to be somewhere at 105, 110. And I was not going to not take advantage of our Congresswoman's time. And so if you're watching, you have proof that I'm just ending up and I'm on my way. We will be back. Tomorrow's Wednesday. We'll be back tomorrow at 10 a.m. and we'll see you then. Have a great afternoon, everybody. And thank you for joining us for Midday Java live with our Congresswoman Ayanna